If I can say, Steve grew up locally in St George area and went to St Susie Public and James Cook's Boys High. He ran a successful accounting firm in Rugdale for 30 years and raised a family of 5 with his wife, Nathan. Steve is a successful businessman, trusted by many local families and businesses, with both public and private sector experience, including as a former president of Sydney Olympic Football Club. He has been the MP for Rugdale since 2015. Steve was sworn in as a minister in the incoming Labor government on April 5th, 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome our key guest, Steve Kamper.
A bit more sophisticated than me, Wally, with the Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's wonderful to be here with all of you tonight. I want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land and pay my respect to the elders past, present and emerging. I want to acknowledge Wally Mahana, the CEO of Canterbury Bankstown Chamber of Commerce. I first was introduced to Wally during the COVID lockdowns and was on a Zoom call with all of the wonderful people within the chamber. And I just want to thank you for the amazing work that you did during that period, in getting together and supporting all your business community. But not only that, supported the government and myself as an opposition spokesperson at the time who was down in the trenches with all of you. I appreciated everything you did as a chamber, and I think you should all give yourself a round of applause. I want to acknowledge Joe Curry, Chairman of the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs. A good friend, even though I'm a Dragon supporter, he's still... Chris Lamont, the Small Business Commissioner. I want a special mention, talk to you about Chris. He's done an amazing job with his office. He runs an amazing, well-oiled machine. I think many could look back, so it was before Chris hit the scene, and what we had and what we got now. Meets up with us every single, regularly, provides us with that sophisticated information that we need in government to make the right decisions to move forward. I want to say it's an absolute honour to work with him, and I think we're so privileged to have Chris Lamont as our Small Business Commissioner. And next to Chris is my friend Joseph Laposta, who runs Multiculturalism New South Wales, who I meet with regularly as well. Charismatic, true to heart, fantastic to have you as the head of Multicultural New South Wales, Joseph. And Violet Rumaliotis, the CEO of Settlement Services International. Great to be here with you as well. Martin Rogers, a very good friend of mine, is the CEO. He's now the CEO at Realise Business and our moderator tonight. I've worked with Martin for maybe 3 or 4 years in relation working with the issues around the taxi industry. And without Martin Rogers, there's plenty of investors and small business people that would be so far much worse off. Martin, I'd like everyone to give him a round of applause, please. I'd like to acknowledge our new MPs, Nathan Haggerty, the member for Leppington, and Kylie Wilkinson, the member for East Hills, who's here with us tonight. Fantastic MPs. So looking forward to the remainder of this term working with you. Bilal El-Hayek, I'm not sure if he's here, the Mayor, and all the councillors that are here with us tonight. And the many other business and community leaders and sponsors in particular, I want to mention the sponsors, who are here with us this evening. Friends, I stand among you very proud to have been recently appointed the Small Business Minister in the Minns Labor Government. And it was an honour because business is an area of public policy that I'm passionate about. It's undoubtedly a very exciting and challenging time to be involved in business, and the COVID interruption has shown us just how rapidly business conditions can change. It's something I hesitate to talk about, a time of immense anxiety and distress to many business owners. Many didn't make it through, and others are still struggling from the impact. Patterns of work and expectations of workplaces have both changed significantly, creating new opportunities, particularly for suburban and non-CBD businesses. However, there is no doubt the current economic situation is placing additional stresses on business owners. And there haven't been too many periods in my lifetime that were this tough. Businesses are facing record inflation, supply chain disruptions, difficulties attracting and retaining staff, and managing cash flow challenges. And sadly, we're already seeing business collapses at a 3-year high. A 3-year high. Insolvencies are increasing in New South Wales, particularly in the construction, real estate and professional services sectors. And in the first 3 quarters of this financial year, more than 2,100 companies entered administration or had a controller appointed. That's straight from the small business. We're facing tough times, and the government needs to do more. Importantly, to address these challenges, what we did establish out of that COVID trauma is that government does have a capability to service the business community. In a short period of time, we changed the rules, regulations and processes to support businesses. Yes, more could have been done and mistakes were made, but we clearly saw that when needed, governments are capable of acting quickly and decisively. But for government to be effective, we need strong and capable partners in the private sector. And that's why I'm so excited when I see active and effective business chambers like the Canterbury Bankstown Chamber of Commerce. You bring together businesses, both large and small, as well as community partners, to provide a strong local voice in the interests of not just your members, but your community. Strong business chambers have the power to change the business landscape, to help shape public policy and define the future growth story for New South Wales. Part of our objective in government is to work with chambers who have the ideas and the vision to move our state forward. The next wave of growth in Canterbury Bankstown certainly isn't going to be driven by government officials operating out of the CBD. But from all of you here tonight who know what your area needs and how to get there, it is our job to support you in achieving that vision. Now, ladies and gentlemen, while growing and managing a business outside of the CBD isn't always seen as sexy, I know personally how rewarding it can be. Prior to entering Parliament, I had the privilege of running a number of businesses, both large and small. This included my family accounting firm, which my brother and I built into one of the largest suburban firms in Australia, operating out of Sanssouci and now Rockdale. In my experience, success in suburban business comes about from harnessing the natural advantages of your region. In my practice, I grew a large client base with a specialty in the construction sector. We were able to compete for large contractors and subcontractors who otherwise might have gone to the likes of the big 4 accounting firms. In part, we could do this because we were located closer to their work and closer to where the owners of these businesses lived. Local connection played a large role. But we also shared a common understanding that not all growth could be driven from the CBD. Over 20 years ago, I remember addressing a Balderstone Hornibrook board meeting where they were looking to open a new office in Sydney, in and around Sydney. They were already in Sydney. And while they were initially looking at North Sydney, I told them to look west, to where the real equity and growth in Sydney would be, the real equity. And at the time, Parramatta was still relatively underdeveloped. And it was hard for city-centric businesses to see what a success story was to come. But when you operate in the suburbs, you gain a much clearer vision of where opportunity actually lies. This is something that we know inherently. While each of you will have a different take on the strengths that Canterbury Bankstown brings to your specific business, I think the one thing that we can all leverage on is the strength of multiculturalism in this region. Canterbury Bankstown is the beating heart of Sydney's multicultural community. That opens up common bonds, networks, as well as international opportunities. More than 3/4 of residents here in Canterbury Bankstown, 76%, are first or second generation Australians. That diversity of experience and of background brings the spirit of entrepreneurialism and resilience that is essential to starting and operating a successful business. It is with this attitude and spirit that we need to work together to capture the next wave of growth. It is with this attitude that we embrace the edge our multicultural businesses have in terms of future trade and investment opportunities. The tough times that we're experiencing at the moment are not going to last forever. I have no doubt that after we weather the storm, there will be real opportunities and greener pastures for business on the other side. And that is the role of government. That will be the role of the Minns government and myself as Minister for Small Business to help navigate and support you through this time. Because New South Wales only thrives if business thrives. We only grow if business grows. From a government perspective, we need to partner with you to deliver on that growth. Business operators ask for very little. You are naturally self-sufficient people. As government, we need to make sure that whatever possible, we aren't, as a government I should say, we need to make sure that wherever possible, we aren't making your lives harder. We need to recognise that excessive and changing regulatory burdens can cause incredible stress for small business operators. We used to talk about regulated industries. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's hard to find an industry that isn't regulated. For governments to be genuine about supporting business, we need to stop being part of the problem. That's why our current work to establish a small business charter will redefine the relationship between the New South Wales government and business in this state. It will show how our government intends to support the business as well as the people behind the business. It will embody our commitment to treat small business fairly and to engage with decency wherever regulatory change is proposed that may impact on small business. And our new focus on service delivery through our Business Bureau will simplify the dealings our company has with government. It will assist business when they are confronted by a difficult or unique challenge. It will consolidate existing successful programs into one area of government and provide Service New South Wales style product delivery to the business community. And it will work with successful business changes like this to bring great ideas and vision forward to help grow our local business communities and ultimately our state. Let me conclude by saying this. I understand the struggles that you face because I have faced the very same struggles myself. I have faced the barriers and hurdles that many of you are currently staring down. But I want to assure you that as your Minister for Small Business, you have a partner and an advocate. The Minns Labor government is here to work with you on this journey. Thank you.
The Minister will be joined by Chris Lamont, the New South Wales Business Commissioner, who is dedicated to supporting the state's small businesses by improving the economic and the regulatory environment they operate in. Violet Grimaliotis, AM, is a social entrepreneur who champions the strength of our diverse communities and is committed to taking a leadership and pioneering role to elevate reconciliation. Violet and her team support newcomers and other vulnerable individuals to achieve their full potential. John Curry, Chairman, Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, the Rugby League Club. He is Head of Technology and Change Management at My Muscle Chef and Chairman at the Canterbury Bulldogs. He's quietly spoken, driven and open to challenge, and now, along with Phil Gordon and CEO Aaron Warburton, around 30 months of hard work are about to pay dividends. Joseph Lacoste. Is the CEO for Multicultural New South Wales. Joseph is driven to improve access and services for our newest Australians. Multicultural New South Wales promotes community harmony and social cohesion in one of the most culturally diverse states in the world. And if I may introduce Martin Rogers, CEO of Realise Business. Realise Business is a leading not-for-profit organisation that supports small business in New South Wales. Roger's experience and knowledge in leading and developing partnership with government stakeholders would be very highly valuable. Ladies and gentlemen, Roger.
Thanks very much, Wally. Some opportunity now to grill some people on the platform here. No, I won't look. As Wally said, my name's Martin Rogers, the CEO of Realise Business, and I've only been in the role now about 4 or 5 weeks, and one of the things I'd like to think about is maybe we could reframe how we think about business. And often we'll say that it's a room full of business people, but in fact it's a room full of people in business. I think that's important, that in this room of over 200 people, everyone here is hardworking, and it's the person behind the business that we have to make sure is at the forefront of our thinking. And I ask everyone here, and they do each day, think about the people behind the business. Interestingly enough, a report just came out today from the Australian Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman, Bruce Bilson, that a third of Australia's GDP, $500 billion, is generated by the small business community. Unfortunately, 3/4 of the small business owners earn less than the full-time average wage. It's something we need to give consideration to. And the population, or the age of people getting into small business, at 47% are over 50. But unfortunately, in 1976, 17% were under 30, and that's reduced to 8%. So we're going to work out how we can encourage people to get into small businesses. And today, and with the theme of leveraging our unique qualities of live, work, play, community, is what it's all about. And on the panel here this evening, we'll be able to address live, work, play, and community, because we really want people who are able to live here, able to work here, whether it's employees or business owners, and there's ample opportunity to play here, and everyone's saying what a wonderful community that we can live in right here. Now, Minister Kamper, it's almost 100 days since that March 25th election, and you have a unique perspective given the portfolios of lands and property, sport, multiculturalism and small business. Have you seen any trends on your out and about and your seeing and mixing amongst all of those portfolios, and how we can work together to amplify the benefits for community around live, working and playing?
Well, thanks, Martin. I do have an interesting mix, and I don't think it's been seen before, because the mix of portfolios require an enormous amount of engagement. And I mean, that's always a struggle, because there's only one of you, although we've got wonderful MPs like Nathan and Kylie that get around and do represent us. But that's been the challenge. But from an operational perspective, it's actually been a perfect mix, because, I mean, you know, I was at an event on Saturday, and it was a sporting event. It was hosted by all business community. It was themed as a multicultural theme, and many of the people that were there were all land and property owners that have an interest in land and property. So each one of them feeds into the other, and I think it's all about, you know, we've got to appreciate that our business community today, and it's nearly half of the operators, it's about 40%, first or second generation Australians. So, and with sport as well, it's all about community engagement, networking, and that's what business is about. And each one of them feed into the other. I've been really encouraged by the fact that even though we're talking about the tough economic times, that the business community is out there, and it's out there spruiking their product or their service, and is looking with hope, even though there are tough issues out there. So what I believe we need to be doing as a government, as I said earlier, is providing that services to enable them, to make it easier for them, to look at how we can work through all the planning changes as well that are going to enable businesses to flourish, whether it's through property. With Crown lands and property, you have this enormous amount of land that has just been sitting there untapped and hasn't been properly used. We as a government are focusing on looking to an inventory, stock take that property, and see how we can enable a lot of the housing policy that we've been talking about in terms of providing the supply that we require in our marketplace, and that feeds into every single other business. And this is the beauty of working all of those portfolios together. But yeah, no, it's been a fairly entertaining period of time.
Yeah, but it's a huge opportunity for you to bring that together and create that vibrant community, which is what it's all about.
Yeah,
and obviously the multicultural aspect is really important. As you mentioned, 50% people of an ethnic background have the small businesses in our area, and we've got a couple of people on the panel who represent multicultural New South Wales as well as multiculturalism. Joseph, I'm interested just to continue this conversation around that path to success, as the Minister's mentioned, is pretty varied. How can we support people from different backgrounds in their pursuit of establishing and creating successful business, and what's happening in multicultural New South Wales?
Yeah, thanks, Martin. I'm interested. I'm the only one that didn't get a mic. What's that about, Wally? No, I can talk. John and I have to share a mic. No, mate, come on. Yeah, well, to give you a bit of context around the stats, 1 in 2 of us either born overseas or has a parent born overseas. This is the entirety of New South Wales. Almost 1 in 3 of us born overseas. More than 1 in 4 of us, and Mr. Mayor Bilal will tell you, particularly in Canterbury, Bankstown, more than 1 in 4 of us speaks a language other than English at home. We are the fastest growing customer base in New South Wales. In the next few years, we're going to take somewhere in the vicinity of about 200,000 migrants every year. Why? Because we are older as a society than we have ever been. We have an ageing demographic, and you heard some of the stats before from Minister Kamper and Wally about the fact that you've got small business owners starting businesses later than they've ever started before. It is critical that we bring in these young professionals and young families. Our birth rate in Australia isn't keeping rate with what it needs to sustain our population. We have to bring in migration. Now, yes, there's a really important conversation about what is the right number, unequivocally, not denying that. But we have to bring in migrants to help support our way of life. Because right now, if we want engineers or GPs or doctors or aged care workers or any of these essential services that a lot of you in this room rely on, we're going to need migration. Now, what is your business proposition, and how good are you at talking to and engaging those communities? Because that will define your success. How good we are as a state in terms of attracting the best and brightest talent to Australia, and we are in an absolute dogfight for talent globally, this country. If this country is not viewed as an inclusive, safe space for young Chinese, Indian, Nepali, the list goes on and on and on families, we will lose that talent to other parts of the world. It is critical that we get the best and brightest to this country to help us in all of the things the Minister spoke about. Then it's equally critical, how good are your small businesses at providing an attractive proposition? Do you have leadership that mirrors the community that you're there to serve and aspires to serve? Or are you thinking about how your company operated 10, 15, 20 years ago? And that's one of the reasons why I think this chamber is incredibly powerful. Because you do, the faces around this room represent what is modern Australia, and you must share that best practice amongst each other to make sure that this region, as the Minister said before, maintains that talent and continues to attract the best and brightest people that are choosing to come to Australia. So hopefully, Martin, that gives you a bit of a snapshot in terms of where we're going as a state.
Yeah, look, definitely. It's interesting around that whole concept of attracting people to come to Australia and the whole best practice here. I might can just continue that with Violet, and if you haven't had the opportunity to read the $1 billion benefit report, I would recommend you do that. It was just released last week, and there's some good, interesting stats in here, and I'm going to ask Violet just to talk a bit about the 5 solutions that they have to the $1 billion benefit, but it's interesting we get people here. And one of the stats that really stood out was that only 33% of migrants have their qualifications from overseas recognised in Australia. So the undervaluing of the opportunity we have for those skills that are coming in and making that attractive. Violet, I'm interested if you could just share a bit more with everyone around the 5 solutions of the $1 billion benefit report released last week.
Thank you, Martin. Well, just to follow a bit on what Joseph was saying, there are 7.6 million migrants in the country at the moment, 60,000 refugees. We have 350,000 jobs, skilled jobs that are vacant. And the purpose of this report was, in our work every day as SSI, as many organisations see, that there are extraordinary number of people who are educated and qualified and skilled, but who are underemployed or working in areas that are not related at all to any of the qualifications and skills that they had. And so we are a country of migrants, and we know that. Many OECD countries have migrants who arrive who are less skilled than the general population. But that is the opposite in Australia. In Australia, we have people who arrive as newcomers who are highly skilled and more qualified than the general population. And yet, they struggle to find work, meaningful work in their occupations. And what we did, we realised that to ensure that people are able to work in the industries and the skills that they want, it's the responsibility not of that person alone, but of employers, of refugee-led organisations, of unions, of government, all levels of government, to ensure that we all together find a solution to this issue. And so what we did, we brought together 50 experts from all those sectors, and we also brought in and consulted people with lived experience. What was their experience on the ground? And the 5 solutions that were prioritised in that, the job skills summit really for migrants and refugees was that the first thing is that we have to fix the broken skills and qualification system. It is a system that is cumbersome. I think the Productivity Commission told us in 2006, it's cumbersome, it's time-consuming, and it is not effective, to the point where only a third of migrants and refugees even engage with it. They don't go through it. It's far too complex for them. And what that means is that people are underemployed, and then there's high levels of requirements around licensing. That's not required really. You don't really need to have that level of licensing. And I think if you ease that licensing requirement, it would bring something like $5 billion into the economy over a 5-year period. So the second point was around ensuring that we protect migrant workers, they're not exploited. So irrelevant of the visa that they're on, when they arrive, no one single person should have control over somebody's passport and their visa, their paycheck. It's a recipe for exploitation. And the third point was that we really need to ease and review the rights of people on temporary visas, their work rights. When you stop people from having the right to work, it is a recipe again for exploitation, but it also doesn't allow people that become dependent on the welfare system and then when they want to get into the labour market, it's very hard for them. And the fourth solution we found was we need innovative tripartite partnerships, the public, private and community sectors coming together in community and finding solutions to activate all this potential in the community, like pilots, employment hubs in local areas. We have business chambers like this. I mean, when I look at all of you and imagine the different businesses that you're all involved in and the people that you employ, the extraordinary skill and talent expertise that you have, imagine at that local level coming together and activating all the people in the local area who want work and working in the area they're trained for. And the last point was to also look at revising our English language expectations. So of course when people arrive, it's important that they provide an opportunity to learn English, although many do arrive who speak English well. But the point is that the levels are far too high, and they don't need to be so high. People have to sit for IELTS tests where they have to pay almost $400 every time. There's no subsidy for that, there used to be. And so people just really become discouraged and don't try for jobs where they could actually do them, but because they don't have that piece of paper, it means that they're locked out. So that were the 5 key things that we came out of the report.
Yeah, well, round of applause. You think about the economic benefit, $5 billion a year and stuff can be untapped, but I urge you to read that report in terms of helping us create that vibrant community aspect. But it's challenging times. The Minister mentioned it's challenging times that are coming ahead, and I just want to refer this one to the Small Business Commissioner. The May 2023 Small Business Momentum Survey unfortunately shows that 83% of businesses are concerned with cost inputs, 39% expect a decrease in revenue, and unfortunately business confidence is down to 26%. Looks like some challenging times coming ahead. Chris, in terms of the Small Business Commission, where do you see us being able to address this to ease those pressures and to bring back the confidence for small businesses to thrive again?
Thanks for that. Look, it certainly is challenging at the moment. We've seen business confidence move essentially in direct correlation with interest rate movements. So if the Reserve Bank increases interest rates, unsurprisingly, small business confidence declines. I didn't bring my glasses or my contacts today, so I'm going to have a guess. But the inflation rate now is about the same rate as it was in 1987. And because I didn't bring my glasses or my contacts, most of you probably weren't in business then. You were probably at school or not even born. So I think businesses are struggling to adjust to what a high inflation economy means for them, and small business in particular, because you're already competing with big business for many of the same skills, many of the same premises, and some of the same customers as your big business counterparts. Our discussions with small business and industry groups has been that small business need to, in some respects, think more like big business, use data more effectively. The Minister mentioned around insolvency in the construction sector. I deal with businesses in the construction sector every day who have signed fixed price contracts, not 2 years ago, not 3 years ago, but last week for margins of less than 5%. Now, that's sort of business for thrill seekers in the current environment. And then to make it worse, many of them aren't aware of security of payments obligations. They haven't signed up for physical contracts, written contracts, and it all gets out of control. And they come to my office and say, "We're owed $750,000 from a builder who we think might be entering administration. What can we do?" It's too late then, in many respects. So the advice that we're giving at the moment is to make sure you actually have your contracts in order. Make sure you're reviewing your cost of input, cost of supply. If you're signing a contract on a lump sum fixed price, make sure there's enough margin in there to ride out a further interest rate rise. None of that is terribly revolutionary, and you're probably saying, well, of course everyone would do that. I think there's probably almost a desperation to keep your business going and to actually sacrifice cost, profit and margin at the same time, and businesses are getting caught out. once upon a time, we would see an average mediation matter in the Commission at about $5,500 to $6,000. In the last 18 months, it's been $35,000. So, and that's in a period of about 2.5 to 3 years. The matters are more complicated, the parties are more desperate, they're taking longer to settle, but we're still at 87% in terms of matters being settled at or before mediation. I was talking to the Minister's office on Friday. Where's Ed? There's Ed. A matter that we didn't think would settle. It was a high-profile matter. I can't go into any more detail than that, but it did. This was a dispute that's been going on for about 3 to 4 years. So I think there's a couple of lessons for business, and I'm always nervous about giving business people advice. But make sure you're keeping an eye on input costs. Make sure you're keeping an eye on contracting, and try to resolve disputes before you find yourself in litigation, because no one wins there.
Yeah, definitely, in terms of the that's an increase. It's a bit concerning in terms of the insolvency aspects that it is rising. Minister, you mentioned before, obviously you're out and about and you're seeing. Well, any other major hurdles that you see businesses are currently facing in addition to looking at contracts and rising prices?
I think Chris mentioned earlier in relation to insolvency, I think to be very, very careful, especially in the contracting area where you've got situations where you're performing work and it's all done bona fide, and suddenly who's paying you goes down, so you're owed an amount of money on left on your contract, but also you suddenly find yourself in a situation where you're dealing with an insolvency practitioner that's putting a claim on payments that were paid to you in advance, and so it's not just what you're owed, it's what you could potentially be could be clawed back from you. And there's a lot of, there's not too many insolvency practitioners here, but there's a lot of predatory activity. That's something that Chris has brought to my attention, and I've been familiar with in my when I was in my accountancy practice. But it's really become commonplace, and that's something just to be very, very wary of. Whatever contract dealings you're doing, whatever progress payments you make, claims you're making in the construction sector, be mindful that they're in line with all the contractual. In terms of the timing of your payments and your progress payments are all in order, because these are things you need to be careful of. And that's something that I think anyone here who's dealing in the construction, be careful of the materials of your pricing. I think Chris was right on the money when he said that, because there is no margin for error. There is no margin for error. If you're going, you'll end up negative. I think that's really important. So just over this period now, we're going through some tough times. I think just watch your costs, watch all your fixed costs, and keep an eye on your input costs, and you'll get through to the other end of this, and hopefully we'll see the good, positive times again.
Oh, look, most definitely. Thanks, Minister. Things will be good again, and people say, I was at a function the other night, and the question is, if bad times are coming or a recession, how long do they last? Some people say anywhere between 9 and 12 or maybe 15 months, and someone asked the question, how do you overcome it? And the response was, maybe you can't overcome it, you just got to work out how to outlast it. It will come back, but it's looking at the costs and running your business efficiently and effectively in order to do that. The theme of this evening obviously is live, work, play, community, and I'm going to change tact a little bit here, and I was going to talk to John a little bit. Obviously the Bulldogs, is there many Bulldog supporters in the room? I'm a West Tigers fan, so it's okay, we're a bit below you on the table, that's okay, but we huddle together from that point of view.
The Dragons.
The Dragons, the three, yeah, we're all here, excellent. So look, just in terms of, John, around the Bulldogs and community, and obviously you've got the Leagues Club, and it does a lot of contribution to the rugby league team. But there's so much more in terms of community, and I was reading there $1.2 million in grants to over 120 organisations in terms of improving the living standards of communities and groups. And John, if you can just tell us a bit more about those other parts potentially of the Bulldogs that we may not be aware of, which fosters that spirit of community, which is obviously what we all want here this evening.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Martin. Welcome, everybody. As a dual director of the League Club, on behalf of our CEO, Greg Pickering, It's a pleasure to welcome everyone. So look, as a dual director, I also sit on a committee that is involved in grants. So grants that support whether it's local schools, local charities, local community groups. Obviously this venue, this iconic venue, trades really well, and it's important that we're not just seen as a football club or just a business partner, but that we're here for community. I'm very proud. Like, if you look at the Bulldogs in the 80s and 90s, people saw it as a very successful club. Yes, they were successful when it came to football, and people assumed because you were doing well in football, you had strong sponsorship, and you were relevant to so many people. And then that got sort of taken for granted. And then over the last 10 years, whether directly or indirectly, we inflicted our own self-recession at the Bulldogs, out of trouble with the NRL side. So I took over as chair in October 2020. We did some hard to the community, the junior league. So the first things we did is we focused on our junior league, the participation numbers. I'm very proud that from the edge of Earlwood to the edge of Liverpool, there's 12 junior league clubs, socio-economically very diverse, culturally, religiously very diverse, but they all come together in a healthy junior league with the increase in participation with girls as well. Our numbers are up. Belmore was always the hub. We'd gone away from welcoming everyone to Belmore. Pleased that we're now playing all our junior league finals at Belmore Sports Ground. And I guess the big prize to that is when we did a submission for a Centre of Excellence, we engaged community groups. We engaged wonderful people like Wally and the Chamber of Commerce, and the government. Thank you to Minister Kamper and welcome. We were able to secure funding for a multi-purpose Centre of Excellence, which we're hopeful will be able to break dirt at the end of the year. That'll include pathways all the way from under 16s or under 15s for girls to women and to NRLW, and our Harold Matthews at 15s and to under 17s Harold Matthews, all the way through to NRL. And just in the short period of time, having smart, being able to attract wonderful, when you have a plan, and you be true to yourself that you're more than just a football team, that you are the Bulldogs and that you're a big club to so many people, you're able to attract people like Phil Gould back to the club. He had unfinished business. We're really honoured and pleased that he's back with us. And in the short period of time that he's been here, our under-17s males, the Harold Mats, they won a grand final earlier this year for the first time in 12 years. Our girls, the Lisa Fiolo Cup, they were undefeated all year, lost in the grand final, but runners-up. The Harvey Norman, so it's the reserve grade to NRLW, they lost 1-0 in the grand final. And now, as we stand here today, our reserve grade are coming first, and our under-21 males are coming second. So bringing working with all our loyal sponsors, all our local community groups, being vibrant, active members of the local Chamber of Commerce with Wally and his leadership, we know that the prize for the NRL and winning again on and off the field is well and truly underway. Thank you.
I just want to say to Joe, congratulations congratulations on your work in terms of your grassroots work. I think it's a contrast with many other clubs in Sydney where you've seen massive decline in participation at a grassroots level. The work you've done in terms of, you mentioned you have 12 clubs that are operating locally. That in itself is really important in terms of keeping the spirit of the Bulldogs alive and to keep the momentum going. I reckon give them another round of applause just for that.
John, I'm actually interested. I was once speaking to an NRL coach, and they were at a presentation. They said, imagine a world where you had a performance review every week. How would we go? And it's an interesting thing around how do you balance the long-term view of the strategic turnaround of the club versus the competing interest of fans who will give you a performance review every week, whether you want it or not, or whether it's justified. As business owners in the room, how can we approach that from a point of view of the scrutiny that you're under every week? We don't get it that often, but what are the lessons and learnings that we can take?
Yeah, look, so I actually work in private equity, and there's a saying, you're only as good as your last game in private equity, which is quite ruthless. No different to rugby league and sport. So if I go back to 2018, the club, we were in the midst of COVID, we were losing on and off the field in all facets. We had a good hard look at ourselves. We made some changes to the board. It was about complementary skills. It was about setting a strategic plan. And again, if I say it with humility, we made some changes to our management. And it was about the outcomes. Everything in private equity is about outcomes. It's no different in sport and football. And we set ourselves milestones. So we constantly review and reflect how we're tracking. And if we have setbacks, we stay united. And you do that through people and a plan, celebrating your wins, and then quickly dusting off when you have little setbacks and staying determined to the path. I shared some stats about how our pathways are going. We know that's going to give us a future grand final. So obviously, when you have a plan and you're united and you have a strategy, it's just like a business. You attract the best talent. We attracted Phil Gould, but we've got other Phil Goulds that people don't know in the building, whether it's in partnerships, whether it's in finance, whether it's in sports science, coaching. We're a career coach, Cameron Serraldo. It's about the long game and the commitment to the outcome. So it's no different. It's just exactly like business in many ways.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I think it's interesting. We all have a grand final in us. It's about how long it will take to get there in terms of what that grand final looks like. We are at a meeting, obviously 200 small business owners. What I am interested in is some takeaways that we could all walk out of this room this evening. We've got sport represented, we've got multiculturalism represented, we've got small business represented, all the great communities. We want to make it all to be one great community. And what do we need to do, and I'm interested from the whole panel, in terms of how can we leverage our strengths either up here on the panel or within the room to ensure that we build that vibrant, strong community here, in particular in southwestern Sydney. Open to the panel.
I might start. The big thing is collaborate. So whether it's in the through the Chamber of Commerce, whether it's people, your vendors, your customers, find out who you think might have similar challenges or who you think would be willing to be kind and collaborative with you. It works both ways. Share the load together. Hire people that you know are committed and celebrate your wins together with them. And if you have challenges, share it, because there's often a solution amongst the group versus just yourself.
Justin?
Can I tell you a cool stat about sport in New South Wales? I worked at the AFL for 10 years and I was the chair of sport in New South Wales for 4. I was on the board for 6. And I had to resign from that position because I couldn't be employed by the government and then lobby the government as the independent federation. But there are more national sporting franchises in New South Wales than there are in the state of California. So you think about the scale of business and the number of people in California, 25, now 28 million people. Compare that to New South Wales and the ACT, just over 8 million people, and you have more national sporting franchises, 11 NRL clubs, Canberra and New South Wales, more national sporting franchises. To John's point, we punch well out of our weight division as a country and as a state, which is something we should be incredibly proud of. But if sport isn't linking with business and it isn't linking with the community and it's not partnering with government, we're doing ourselves a disservice. Our faith organisations, our community organisation, is a massive opportunity. We are a society that fundamentally gets on incredibly well with each other. But if we're not looking left and right to see how we can help each other get better and see the opportunities and the linkages, then I guarantee you we won't have the number of elite sporting franchises going forward, because it is harder and harder for them to sustain their businesses at that level without the corporate sponsorship, without the community participation. And for the first time as a state, our participation numbers are just starting to slow. Massive growth in women's sport, tick, but now it's incumbent upon all of us to continue to prioritise sport and that essence of community and the essence of volunteering going forward. Because if we don't, we will become like an American model, where virtually no one over the age of 17 or 18 plays sport. And you look at their health outcomes. You look at them as a country in terms of where they're at. So it's critical we nourish and maintain those sporting partnerships. And I hope, John, you don't just celebrate your juniors, but you think about your masters comps and getting more and more people in this room playing for the senior Bulldogs as well.
Because that would be entertaining.
Chris, sporting or business?
Probably both. You've got 205, where's Wally? About 205 local chambers across New South Wales. Depending on how accessible Wally is, I say he's either the top one or top five. Where is he? Over there. So in the short term, there's enormous potential, given skill shortages, given the challenges that you're facing to recruit talent, notwithstanding our new migrants, who we should embrace and welcome. But the best chance you've got of probably filling vacancies may not be from hiring another employee. It might be partnering with another business in this room. So I think there's probably a two-stage process that we need to think about, particularly in the next 12 to 18 months. Of course, welcome our skilled migrants who make a fantastic contribution. But if you are finding a career set or an industry that is particularly tough, maybe don't try and recruit for it. Maybe try and partner with someone in this room. I also think there's a great opportunity for local chambers across the state to start partnering, because many of you will work outside this region. Many of you may not know where to get input, supply, other arrangements beyond this region. Some of you will. But how do we get other local chambers partnering so your businesses can grow beyond Canterbury and across the state? So I think the local chamber network can pay a fantastic contribution. It ticks a lot of the boxes in terms of multiculturalism, of course sport, but more importantly perhaps community.
Thanks, Chris.
I just want to reinforce what Chris just said. I'm a true believer in a good, strong chamber community actually can produce wonderful results as long as they're all united and working together. And if it can be, blended in with the local sporting communities like you have here, it's such a plus. It's such a plus because, what makes a community, when community, whether it's a business community, sporting communities all work together, there are outcomes that can be achieved. From a planning perspective, you can have a vision for an area, you can have a vision for a community, but that's when everyone is collaborating. And I think what's extremely important that we continue to do this and promote what we've got here across the state. Wally, I know you've got a good thing going here, but I want to see it everywhere because with this type of connection, this type of network, you can actually find solutions to all challenges within our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Minister. And Violet, obviously the economic empowerment of migrants is important as well in terms of how do we have those takeaways from the room this evening?
Well, acknowledging, I guess, the first point that it's not a level playing field for many, and many of us in this room have privilege and opportunities, and so it's important to understand that some don't, and it is about that helping hand. Looking at opportunities to collaborate, because just as all the other panels have spoken about, those principles of collaboration. I know in our industry, in our sector, if we don't, we have consortiums, we have partnerships, we merge, we come together, and that's how we have success. So to support people to economically participate in community and empower them, they need to have a sense of belonging first. They need to feel that they belong, that they're valued, that they have something to contribute. And a chamber like this has so much that you can offer. Collaborate with organisations like SSI, and there's many in the Canterbury Bankstown area where you can organise financial literacy workshops, different entrepreneurship initiatives. We've got an Ignite Small Business Initiative that actually has an ecosystem of support, and we have chambers and business people like yourselves who actually contribute greatly to coach and mentor new entrepreneurs, offer them networks and explain the market to them. All of those things are critical and really important for success. Providing education and training, if you can offer internships, for example, they're wonderful ways where you can have some grunt in your business that's not going to cost you too much, but also someone is learning and can also bring insights that are global, they've learned from other countries, for example, that they can apply. And look at the way that you perhaps recruit and look at opportunities where you're looking at people's experience. It's not so much about the qualification and that tick that you're qualified. It's about what does that person bring, life experience, which is extraordinary when you think people might be forced to migrate, but they come with great strengths and experience and expertise. And I think to foster diversity and inclusion, sponsoring sports, that's such a great way of, for us, it's such a soft entry for many of our people into community. Cricket and football, where young kids and their parents find ways that they can actually have a sense of community and belonging. I remember years ago we had a group of about 20-25 asylum seekers. A young man just walked, an older man actually walked past and saw them playing in their local, in Granville, it was Granville actually, in an oval. They were wearing thongs and running around in the dark because they said they had to wait for the security to leave so they could actually play because they weren't, in any way licensed to play. And the guy said, "Do you want me to coach?" I used to coach, or I used to be a coach. So they started coaching these guys, and they started saying, "We want to play against Australian teams," because they were a mix of Iranian, Iraqis, Afghans, and so they contacted our case managers in SSI and talked to me. And we went on radio, and it was ABC radio, I think, Richard Glover, I think we spoke to. And we talked about these young men who wanted to play soccer, but they didn't have the money to join any clubs or the money for the shoes. And by the time that interview finished, $15,000 were pledged. People were ringing and pledging money. And the club rang, I think they were from Lippington. They said they can join our club. So they joined the club. They won the finals. They were D grade. They weren't high grade, but they still won the final. And they started work. They were part of the club, the sausage sizzle, all of that comes with a sense of belonging and being part of something. And that's what they wanted. They wanted to be part of part of the Australian sort of society, not just in their own communities. So there's so much that this chamber and many chambers could offer. But and I agree what people are saying, Wally, you're doing an extraordinary job. The board, all of you, and you should really, start a community practice and really teach what you've got, what you know to others, because it's gold.
Yeah, thank you. Big round of applause. Time has gotten away from us. We can continue conversations for the whole night in terms of the expertise that's up here. And the big takeaway obviously is collaborate, but number one thing, have a vision for the area. And Wally Mahana is the man that's going to lead obviously this area into the future, and obviously with the people on the panel here can make sure that happens because the people in the room want to make it happen. Can we thank our panel here this evening?
Sorry, just quickly, if I can invite Eddie Shaheen, the chairman for AC Property, to say a quick thank you to our guests and to our audience.
Well, good evening, everybody. I didn't expect to stand up in front of you, but Wally asked me for a vote of thanks. I think the first vote of thanks needs to go to Wally and the board of the Canterbury Bankstown Chamber of Commerce. I think you can all agree with me that they've done a fantastic job in our community. So if you please join with me, give them a round of applause. I am a local Canterbury Bankstown person that grew up and went to school in Lakemba, in Bankstown, and resided in the area, and I can tell you what this chamber's done has been absolutely remarkable, so congratulations. That's, from me, direct experience, and I think it's manifested and we can all see it today. The other vote of thanks is to these wonderful speakers that have given up their time tonight. Minister, welcome to you and your portfolios, and I wish you very well. And you're a breath of fresh air because you've got business experience, so you've come from the field, and hopefully you take that with you and you can work towards changing the culture in government and in government services from not how we can stop you but how we can help you. So that's a very, very important point. It's a cultural change. And Commissioner, we wish you well too, and we wish you every success in that area because we in small business need all the help we can get and bringing down those walls, because these business people, and I'm one of them, are struggling to find time to do business because compliance is huge and there's so much red tape. So the challenges are many, and we need all the help we can get from your team. So yes, thank you. And of course to our other speakers, and especially my dear friend John, I wish the Bulldogs every success, mate. We're all behind you here. Even St George and the Tigers and to the other speakers, thank you very much, and for all your great work that you do in the community. So thank you.
I'm just going to ask you to make a presentation to our sponsors. If I can just trouble you, you can move your seat back. Can I ask Sam Murray to come forward, Judy, Michael Azzi, Barry and Jesse. Jessica, please.
He's the ultimate style. I want to buy that.
We've got some lucky door prizes. So, any more business cards? You've got 3 seconds.
I already put one. Actually, you know what?